it's 7:32, so I'll bring this meeting to order, and certainly if people log in at any time, that'll be fine. I think one thing is everyone should be on mute. John, I don't know if you're able to mute everyone, but if not everyone, but the speaker should be on mute just so background noise doesn't get in the way. And of course, when it comes to times for questions after, just unmute. So anyways, this is our first virtual presentation. Couldn't have imagined we would be doing this when the last presentation ended in February, but at least we're doing something. And we'll see how this goes. We're judging by at least having 25 participants and more because of people in the background. I think we're off to a good start, so I'm pleased with that. We will be having presentations virtually in the new year. And I should just add that January 28th, it'll be, make sure I pronounce it. Is it Howard Slepkoff?
Oh, Slepkoff, yeah.
Slepkoff, yeah. It will be in the history of the Jewish community in St. Catharines. February 25th will be Peter Myler on Richard Pierpont and Lemuel Brown. So I can't read my own writing there. I wrote notes beforehand, but I can't even read that. Anyways, so we are continuing to do this well into the new year. And as I mentioned, I don't know, at the annual general meeting, for some of those who weren't there, when things become safe, we will go back to having in-person meetings. This is not a long-term, well, at least for the near term, this is what we're going to do. Whenever things become safe, hopefully later on in 2021, maybe in the fall of 2021, we will revert back to having in-person meetings. We're just doing this because we think it's important to present our product, and we realize we can't do it in person for a while. So rather than doing nothing, we think this is a good opportunity for those who want to participate and join in. And we've got a lot of great speakers. So we think this is the best we can do at this time. So we're glad that everyone's here. So I think on that basis, we can start with our presentation. What I'll do is, well, we know this is Sarah Kinghead and it's on Beaverdams. So I will provide a brief introduction and biography of Sarah. So a historian based in the Niagara region, Sarah Kinghead has considerable experience with municipal, local, and regional heritage and historical communities, Indigenous education initiatives, and heritage property restoration and commemoration. With 2 graduate degrees from Toronto in history and art history and institutional experience in Ontario and England, her work since 2005 has focused principally on settler heritage property and cultural heritage landscape identification, research, evaluation, and documentation. Research into the Beaverdams to Kew Heritage Corridor led to the publication of an award-winning book in 2017, Where the Beavers Built Their Dams, that is in its 4th printing. Other than continued research into the Beaverdams area, her most current project is assembling a comprehensive history of Thorold's best-kept secret, the elusive stonecutter contractor entrepreneur John Brown, whose legacy is only now being fully appreciated. Sarah was named Honorary Historian by the City of Thorold in 2015 for her work with Heritage Thorold, LACAC. She was accepted as a full professional member of the Canadian Association of Heritage Planners in 2019 and earned a graduate diploma in planning from the University of Waterloo in October of 2020. That's the introduction. So Sarah, the stage is yours, and I will go on mute now.
Okay, hi. Greetings all. I'm going to try sharing screen now, which should be straightforward, but of course isn't really. I'm not sure why. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So I'm using 2 monitors here. So oh. Sorry. Come on. Okay, I am going to try sharing screen again now. There we go. Okay, and can everyone see that okay? Nope. There, can you see it all? Do you see it? No, not yet.
Yep, that works.
Okay, so that's my top page. Okay. Hello, greetings all, and I'm sorry for the difficulty getting connected. We thought it was going to be okay, but I had some difficulty getting in. Anyhow, thank you very much for joining me tonight, as I hope to share a bit more about Beaverdams history. And this evening, I will explore the development of education in Thorold's historic canal community. Okay, and I don't know how many of you will have driven by one of these markers along Beaverdams Road at the causeway entrances to the village, and these would be on Marlatz Road and Yates Street. When we moved to the area in 2005, this was one of the first things I saw before coming to the then sadly derelict Beaverdams Church. Even though many things have changed in the area since then, and most remarkably with the church, these markers remain, and perhaps rather misleadingly suggest that the village was a site of Canada's first free school in circa 1790. This lecture seeks to clarify these markers' meaning and to tell the story of how free education came to Beaverdams and the stories of some of those people who made it happen. In terms of context, the village of Beaverdams emerged as Thorold's first European settlement in the late 18th century. It was located at the crossroads of two Indigenous trails that were part of a sophisticated network that crisscrossed the region and provided an essential framework for those coming into the region in the years after the American Revolutionary War. Of note, the trail that followed one of the main tributaries of the 12-Mile Creek, the Beaverdams Creek, was intersected by what later became known as the Hamilton Stagecoach Road at the same spot it does today. And it was here in the village first emerged and became an important hub for those traveling up or along the escarpment between Queenston or Niagara Falls and Burlington Bay, or further inland toward the Grand River or around Lake Erie. As we know, the arterial network throughout the region was carefully recorded in the late 18th century. Simcoe's Theatre of War maps are case in point, like this one reproduced by Francis Hall in 1816. It has been noted that soldiers and settlers were the principal beneficiaries of this sophisticated indigenous infrastructure, as without the trails, it would have been significantly more difficult for the British to establish a geopolitical hold on the area after the American Revolution. And please, I didn't say this, but if you want to ask questions, just unmute yourself and you can just jump in. Okay. So these are some of the built heritage landmarks that survived into the 20th century. And these are ones that were built before the Third Welland Canal. And we know that in the early 19th century, according to John Thompson, already in the village, there was a blacksmith, a general store, there was a post office, a tavern, along with a sawmill, saddlery, harness shop, and even we're told, a chair factory. And so these are a few of them that, people who've grown up in the area might have remembered or, know about. But, I'm drawing attention at this point to this little, in the bottom right corner, this little house that was on the road line between, between lots 49 and 50. And this was the community's second purpose-built school, erected in 1833 and rebuilt in 1855. And it was what would become the first free school in British North America, but it was also known more generally as School Section Number 2, Thorold. A letter from, sorry, I think I missed a page here, sorry. But School Section Number 2 was not the first school location in the area. Ever since the Common School Act in 1816, district school boards ensured that education was available, or at least an option for most children. Yes, okay. A letter from the British Civil Secretary to his masters in London tells us that between April and June 1817, Elijah Millard was teaching at both Beaverdams, where he was responsible for 24 scholars, and Stamford on Lundy's Lane, where he had 35 scholars. And this map here shows you that they were connected obviously by the Beaverdams Trail, which then later became Beaverdams Road. And today, on the other side of the canal is of course Marlatz Road. And but of course, an important feature about Millard is that he and his family were loyalists and Methodists who worshipped at some of the earliest meeting houses in Upper Canada, including the Old Red Meeting House at Green's Corners, which is there at the right-hand side, and also very likely at Israel Swayze's location before the Beaverdams Church was built in Beaverdams. Sadly, we know almost nothing about Millard, other than his being the son of Isaiah Millard, who had come from Connecticut and whose early death in Stamford in 1793 left his rather desperate widow, Beulah, and many young children, as we can read in many of various petitions to the government for assistance. It is for this reason that the son of Beaverdams patriarch Israel Swayze, Hiram Swayze, established a more appropriate school at the Crossroads in 1820. We learn more about this multi-purpose space from Esther Summers' notes, as we see in this slide. Actually, we don't, because I have jumped a bit, sorry. Okay, yes, okay. These schools, okay, anyhow, the first schools were considered pretty rough and ready and not terribly fit for purpose, but there wasn't a whole lot that could be done. And it was as a result of this, I'm sorry to say, that the Hiram Swayze established a more appropriate school at the Crossroads in 1820. And we learn a little bit about this from some of Esther Summers' notes. And we can read here, I don't know that it's necessary for me to read this all, but I've highlighted those sections that I think are the most relevant. And that he erected the first school at Beaverdams in 1820. And then she includes on this piece of, one of her many pieces of paper, a quotation from of a letter that had been sent in 1828, describing it as Beaverdams Schoolhouse. But the location of this first proper school has been a source of much debate over the years. Although it always was probably, although it will always probably remain a source of speculation, this map, published by Samuel Guile in 1853, shows a school location, which is indicated by the initials SH, roughly opposite Hopkins Inn on Swayze land, west of the Crossroads and south of today's DQ Road. And I apologize that this was only, I got this digital version online, of course. And of course, just where the, there's a crease, it kind of, or there's a bit of a hole, which kind of obscures it, but you do see that there is something that has been identified as SH, or a schoolhouse. But the important fact here is that when Guile produced this map in 1853, school section number 2, Thorold, had already been established further east along the Beaverdams Trail, and is indicated by the green star, as you can see on your on the slide. So obviously he was working from earlier information. Okay, as an indication of persistent confusion, I would like to share the caption of this photo that was published in the Thorold Post or St. Catharines Standard, I don't know which one, that states categorically that the first school was located opposite the 1879 school building that we know today, that's on Marlat's Road. And it was built to replace Hiram Swayze's school of 1820, but this isn't true. Not only is there no evidence in the historic record to support this claim, but more importantly, Esther Summers had the mid-19th century Beaverdams School trustee book, of which today we only have a few copies and an important transcript. According to this book, we learn that in 1833, another school was built on the road allowance between Kelly and Marlat's lands in the township lots 4950, about a kilometer east of this, the current school's location, on what was still being used as the Beaverdams Trail. So, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, as mentioned earlier, the building made available by Hiram Swayze in 1820 for education was used in a variety of different capacities. And as the educational mandate in Upper Canada gathered momentum, it was inevitable that a purpose-built school would be required. But it was not until the creation of District Council of Niagara in 1841 that the simple frame schoolhouse built in 1833, would become known as school section number 2. And by 1842, Thorold Township had 7 school sections and 6 union sections. Two crucial sources of information allow us to piece together a picture of schooling at Beaverdams over the nearly half century between the provision by Hiram Swayze of space for education and the establishment of the 1879 schoolhouse. First, since I've not had the opportunity to see the original copy of the school trustee's book from Esther's collection, I had relied previously on snippets of its contents in her notes that are archived at Mayholm. However, I was very fortunate last Christmas, completely out of the blue, to be offered a full transcription of its contents by Anna Gale, who lives in Thorold. In addition to this, I've been able to see a few photocopied pages of this book that are part of Alan Hughes's papers at Brock and or were among Esther's papers at the Mayholm Foundation. And together now, it is possible to surmise that probably most, maybe all of Esther's notes pertaining to this school came from this historic book. For example, this page on the left is an original copy from the trustee's book, and it was transcribed almost verbatim by Esther. She abridged it slightly, but we read that the schoolhouse was built in school section number 2 in the year 1833, and that it was opened on November the 4th, 1833, and the size of it. And that a new brick schoolhouse was built in 1855 and at the same location, and it was about double the size. And it cost about $12 to build, which is kind of remarkable. And, oh, sorry, I just want to point out, and then on the right-hand side, there is a photo of Esther's notes where you can compare the two. Okay. The choice of location for the school was, we read, driven by the need to provide reliably accessible education to the children living on both sides of the Welland Canal in this school section. The well-used trail that led to Niagara Falls was the natural choice, with its bridge over the canal, east of the Beaverdams crossroads, which was known as Marlat's Bridge. Repeated frequently in Esther's notes, we read that the nomination of the road allowance between George Marlat's and Isaac Kelly's properties in township lots 49 and 50 was met with some reluctance. In her notes for the DeQ Falls Women's Institute, she observed that while, quote, while Marlat was willing to give land, Isaac Kelly wouldn't. Later, she explained that, quote, Marlat gave land, but Isaac Kelly wanted to be paid for his share, end quote. And yet on another miscellaneous piece of paper, she wrote, and we can read it here, that a description. I'm not going to read it through. I have provided I've highlighted it there for you to read, but I think probably we're running out of time, so I don't think I want to read too much here. But the run-on nature of this commentary, which is dated to about 1842, suggests that it was transcribed from another historic source. But we know now it wasn't the school trustee's book, because it's not in the school trustee's book or the transcript that I have. And also I'd like to note that in 1842, Hiram Marlat would have co-owned the road allowance with Isaac Kelly because his father had died about 2 years earlier. So now we know where the second school was located. Okay. And why? And we come to the next topic, the provision of non-fee paying or free schooling at Beaverdams. Esther offers some detail in one of her notes, which I won't read, but I've highlighted the red part, but it provides a more local rationale for Ryerson's nomination of school section number 2. And as he was using it as to be a kind of a test case for public education. We also learn in this passage here about the proximal relationship of the 1833 and the 1855 schoolhouses, and that they were located on opposite sides of the road to Niagara Falls, which of course was by then known as the Beaverdams Road. Okay, that's not working. Okay. Now this is the Tremaines map of the counties of Lincoln and Welland, Canada West, and I've kind of tried to draw out the section that I want to focus on. And we see, again, this is very, it's not a great, digital version, but you can see SH there. And that's, of course, schoolhouse. And this is in 1855. This map was produced in 1862, so we know that the brick building, the brick school, had been built in 1855. So we know that it was on the south side of the road. And for this reason, we can be pretty sure that the 1833 version had been built on the north side of the road, which I'll come to later. That's kind of important. Sorry. Okay, so education at Beaverdams. So I guess probably most of us are wondering, why was free education such a big deal? There clearly were schools and increasingly supportive legislation to support education for children. And so, but I think importantly, availability of education wasn't the problem people faced in Beaverdams or elsewhere, but rather the issue was of irregular school attendance, something that was particularly acute in poorer, more rural areas like Thorold. Many parents simply couldn't afford the cost or the loss of labor in having their children attend school regularly. They might go once in a while, but it wasn't regular. And Thompson tells us in his history that he wrote that as there were only a few children in that section wealthy enough to pay fees, consequently the attendance was small and the salary paid utterly inadequate as compensation to a teacher of any ability whatever. Exacerbating the situation, Niagara's population increased by about 25% between 1841 and 1842 with the commencement of construction of the new or the second Welland Canal. For some canal communities, it has been estimated, and I have not been able to verify this, but it's remarkable, that the pupil to teacher ratio jumped from about 1 to 29 to as high as 1 to 85. Now we do know from, again, the school trustee's book that in Beaverdams in 1842, there were 48 pupils being taught by one teacher. So the ratio there was 1 to 48, which is still pretty high, if you think about it. Adding to the pressure, we know that the teacher salaries declined by nearly a sixth, from about £39 to £33 per annum on average. Therefore, in terms of public education in Upper Canada, the 1833 schoolhouse at Beaverdams was designated by the Reverend Ryerson to become one of the first free schools in British North America as per an act that had been written in 1847, which I won't read because it's too long a title. But his pedagogical format would form the basis of an educational model and program of delivery that enjoyed, as we all know, a laudable reputation for more than a century. And that is until funding cuts began to kick in, and of course, most recently, COVID. But its premise was that education should be provided universally and indiscriminately to all children. In this way, it was the responsibility of government to pay teachers' salaries through taxation rather than arbitrarily through public grants or piecemeal by pupils' parents. It should be noted that Ryerson's ideas were governed by a specific agenda, and I think probably most of us are aware of, Ryerson is perhaps not, such a his agenda has been questioned more and more recently, but that the delivery of mandatory and standardized education would help shape citizens to their, and I quote here, appropriate duties and employments of life as Christians, as persons of business, and also as members of the civil community in which they live. For someone who had begun his ministry as a saddlebag preacher in the Niagara region, Ryerson was also aware of possibly wavering loyalties among his many of his Methodist brethren who still belonged to American conferences. Free universal education, therefore, was equally as much about education as it was about geopolitics for the generations after the War of 1812 and the 1837 rebellion. Here we have one of the and this is really hard to find, this took a lot of searching, but one of the very few descriptions of the celebrations that accompanied the designation of that first free school on September the 15th, 1847, at Isaac Kelly's Grove on the road allowance with Marlette's property. And the really neat thing about this, I'm just showing a snippet of this, but the really neat thing about this description is that first of all, the event was advertised as a cross-border event, and that seats, if you can believe this, for 2,000 people were provided. I'm sure this wasn't 2,000 chairs, but nevertheless, they had the space, and they were expecting that many people. I don't know how many people actually showed up, but it is worth thinking or remembering that certainly in the 1820s and 1830s, the Methodist camp meetings at Beaverdams are said to have attracted thousands of people. And the important takeaway there is that this was a very well-traveled intersection, a very well-traveled area, which is again another reason why that area was chosen. Okay, although produced in 1876, this map allows me to show the relative locations of all 4 schools at their 3 different locations. It also graphically explains why the current schoolhouse was erected in 1879 at its current location. And that is, of course, the expropriation of the land by the Welland Canal Company for the 3rd Canal, adjacent to Marlatt and Kelly's Road Allowance School. The land on which the current and final schoolhouse was located came from the widow Mary Hopkins, whose husband Ephraim had built and operated the Stone Inn at the Crossroads. And here I just wanted to bring up, again, a kind of a neat fact about these schools is that the Swayze family, which was admittedly massive, it played a huge role in the provision of free education at Beaverdams. And indeed, all 3 school locations were donated by members of the Swayze family, a dynasty of late loyalists whose staunchly Methodist convictions were premised on a communitarian ideal that society could only be as good or as wise or as competent as its individual members. In this way, the community's patriarch, Israel Swayze, encouraged his son Hiram, well, actually, to kind of create a process of delivering public education. And in 1820, we know that Hiram donated land at the Crossroads for education. We also remember that while Isaac Kelly was reluctant to provide land on the road allowance adjacent to his property, George Marlatt seems to have had no qualms, because perhaps Marlatt's wife, Abigail, was Hiram Swayze's sister. Nearly half a century later, it was the widow of Hiram Swayze's first cousin once removed, Ephraim Hopkins, who deeded the 1-acre parcel of land on which the schoolhouse sits today. Okay, we've already met the teacher Elijah Millard, who traveled between the school at Green's Corner on Stamford to Beaverdams in 1817 to teach, and possibly was still around when Hiram Swayze constructed or offered the first multi-use building that could serve as also a school in 1820. But among the others were a couple I'm going to focus on right now, and that's going to be it pretty much. The first teacher we encounter in the school trustee's book from the early 1840s was a man named Walton Maudsley, an Englishman who arrived in Thorold in 1843 at the age of 18, supposedly already with a teacher's certificate. Around 1844, he had been contracted to work at Beaverdams, as we read in the following excerpt, which I won't read. And so it's just a bunch of details about his being hired, and also the act that governed that hiring. A year or so later, Maudsley appears to have been striking a harder deal with the trustees, that instead of just £5 per month, he wanted to be given access to both the funds provided by the government, as well as a stipend per student of 4 shillings and 4 halfpenny per quarter. But this was not all. Further records indicate that he was successful, and he did receive, as I've written here, I've highlighted here, the government money for the half year from midsummer to Christmas 1846, and also such portion of next year's government money as shall be due to the time this quarter goes into next year. I don't have time to show it, but Maudsley's accounts also show that he kept track of what each family owed. Perhaps disenchanted by teaching, but with a few extra pennies in his pocket, Maudsley was able to leave this profession in early 1847 and buy property nearby. He married and began a large family. And his story is, again, really remarkable, and I don't have time to go into it, but he winds up going back to England. He becomes a cartographer. He goes to New Zealand and he's surveying. Anyhow, he returned to Thorold and his family, and unfortunately died tragically as a result of alcoholism when he was only 50. He fell into the canal. But he is remembered in the Thorold Post as being a man of, quote, no mean abilities. In some things, he was a perfect genius. Maudsley's successor was the American-born Jeanette or Janet Leet. This painting does not depict her, and it is not even set in Ontario, but rather Prince Edward Island. But I'm showing it here because I think it gives us an idea of the kind of challenges a teacher might have faced at one of these more parochial community schools. And we can see it on the faces of these very stern and rather dubious looking trustees. In 1847, Jeanette Leet was hired on a salary of £32, 6 shillings, a deal by comparison with Maudsley's salary of more than £40. Thompson's history tells us that she was the first teacher hired by the Free Common School at Beaverdams and that she came from Lockport, New York. That she was an American is worthy of note, since Ryerson was particularly vociferous about keeping Republican ideals out of Canadian classrooms. But nonetheless, the trustee's book indicates that she taught there almost a full 2 years before leaving at the end of 1848. By 1850, she had returned to New York State and was living with her parents and siblings. She did not marry till 1864 and lived until a few months shy of her 100th birthday. And here we have her headstone. We know in Lockport. We know very little about Janet Leet, but recent research suggests that she was the daughter of, and I'm going to try to pronounce this, Epiphras Not Leet, a descendant of Governor William Leet, the first governor of the combined Connecticut colonies, and his wife, Harriet Wadsworth Thompson. Janet appears to have had more than just a cursory relationship with the area. Indeed, 7 years later, in 1855, her younger brother, James Madison Leet, was hired at the same school, on a single-year contract. Just kind of remarkable. He himself is an interesting fellow, and he served in the US Civil War in West Virginia as an assistant surgeon, and he earned ultimately the status of lieutenant colonel. Okay, and, okay. Oh no. Sorry. Oh my goodness, I don't know what's going on here, sorry. Excuse me. Okay, we're going to go back and hopefully I'm going to be able to, oh, here we go. I don't know why that did that, I'm sorry. Okay, anyhow, so what we have here are the teachers at Beaverdams from 1848. And this is quite a remarkable list. This is in the course of from 1848 to 1861, so that's only 13 years. And there are 15 different people who were hired. And of note, in 1853, 3 people seem to be hired as a teacher. I'm not sure whether that's the trustees or the students, but anyhow, it's quite remarkable. Okay, and okay. As I wrap up this talk, I would like to mention the school building that most of us will be familiar with. Its third location in less than a century, school section number 2 was built in 1879 on Widow Hopkins' land. Again, from Esther's records, we learn that those extremely large classroom sizes of the 1840s had shrunk by the end of the century, mercifully. Thus, by 1890, school attendance records show that on average, 25 pupils were being taught at one time in the one-room schoolhouse. Okay, and many of us, of course, will be familiar with this marvelous postcard rather, on the left that provides a unique view west along the old dirt track that came off of Marlette's Bridge over the first canal. One of the first photographic images of the Beaverdams community in the first years of the 20th century, it's possible to get an idea of what the area looked like before it was developed by Frank Wilson after the First World War. And on the left is the detail of the schoolhouse, and that's from Thompson's history. I wanted to share this photo with you also because it's just such a great snapshot of some of the children in the 1940s, who attended Beaverdams School. And they're lined up with their various instruments, and some people will recognize some of these characters, but apparently they had won some kind of local competition. Okay, and now more recently, we're jumping forward to 2020. My husband Martin and I wandered to the point where I believe the 1833 and 1855 schools were located, just west of the Thorold Welland Canal, on the road allowance between lots 49 and 50, along the old trail and former Marlatz Road, in an area that, as you can see, deeply rutted by ATV tracks and lots of debris.
Lot 49.
And I've been there in about 2016 with my son. And then, as back in April, I found evidence of a rectangular stone foundation, which is at the surface there. And I don't know, and this would be an interesting topic for conversation. It'd be a fabulous outing as well, whether this could be the foundation associated with the 1855 brick building. Anyhow, I can't help thinking it's worth another study, and if at the very least a plaque if it can be proven. Anyhow, I am done now, and so I will actually thank you all for listening to this, and I'm sorry for the blips in the presentation. But anyhow, I would also like to just acknowledge in particular resources I received from a few individuals, especially Anna Gale of Thorold, who provided me with that transcript, David Sharon at Brock University, who provided me with Alan Hughes's papers. And then most recently, like in the past couple of days, Dr. Duane Leet, who is a descendant of Janet Leet. And he's provided me with all sorts of information about her and her family. Anyhow, and I'm also extremely grateful to the Mayhome Foundation, to the various local libraries, Thorold and St. Catharines in particular, especially during COVID, because it's not been easy, as anyone knows, to get hold of resources. And also I would like to thank also the various conversations and collaborations I've had with other local historians and information I've received. And also like to, call out to the Beaverdams villagers who I've spoken to over the years, both past and present, in online capacities and in person. And of course, the local historical societies and museums, and notably Heritage Thorold Lackac and the Thorold Museum. Anyway, thank you very much. And I have a long bibliography. If anyone wants a copy of this PowerPoint, I'm very happy to share it. Just let me know and I will email it off to you, and we'll go from there. Anyhow, that's kind of that. And I hope, and now I have to stop sharing screen. You are sharing, okay. Stop share. Okay, so there we are. Okay. So I hope that was okay. I really don't know whether the two screens worked okay or not, but I hope it was all right.
Yeah.
So are there any questions or comments or?
Yes, could you go back to that picture of the laneway where the church was, and it sort of described where? It's about 3 pictures.
Okay. Okay, the host has disabled attendee screen sharing.
Again, sorry, I'll make you the host again. Let me.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, yeah.
I have to find you.
Should be so easy.
Yeah.
You think after how many Zoom calls have we all done so far?
There
On the left.
Share
You're the
screen.
host.
And so I'm going to go here and have to, sorry, you're going to have to, it's not as easy as it looks. Okay, so play from current slide.
Because I was spoke to.
So you wanted to ask about this.
I just wanted to see that picture because I didn't get a chance to read underneath. I can't get my bearings on what's what, that trail with the schoolhouses on either side.
Oh, you mean, is this the picture that you will?
3 screens back. I guess if we were there in person.
Oh, you mean this one? Okay, so you can imagine. Can you? I don't know if you can see my my cursor, but right at the back along the horizon, that would be the third canal. So if you,
I can't see it. I can't see it.
It's not shared.
No,
oh,
You got to share your screen.
if we were there.
oh, shoot.
Oh, share.
No. Can you see it now?
Just
No.
see you.
No? You can't see that?
No.
Oh, maybe something I want to move on to the next time.
What do you see at all? Do you see?
I just see you.
Oh. Okay, let me try that again then.
No, it's okay.
No, I should should work. I mean, I don't know.
See,
Oh,
that's,
here we go. Okay, this is it?
no,
Yay.
it's back. It's back one more.
Okay. So back one more. So you want,
Back, okay, one more. Got it. Got it. Thank
okay, phew, okay.
Wow.
So as I said, I can't seem to figure out how to use the pointer tool.
Yes.
But if you imagine on the left, you can see the bell tower. That's the school. And at the intersection, further along, you see the Wilson, or what became the Wilson Homestead.
Oh,
That's at the corner of Yates and Marlat's today.
oh,
And then on the left, those few buildings are belong to the what was the family? The Higgins family.
okay.
And so if you go further along, you would get to the Beaverdams Church on your left, much further along. But at this point, it was farmland basically. And
Okay.
this is just after the flooding, and I've mentioned before that until they knew what was going to be inundated, people really were reluctant to build anything. But it was Frank Wilson who was very entrepreneurial, and of course he bought the land and then he set up his subdivision, which became the village of Beaverdams that we know today.
Okay.
So if you can imagine, on the right hand side now would be where there's I'm not sure what
That school is still there, right?
yeah, it's still there. It's that's where Albert Seaford lives.
Albert, yeah.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
it
got
right there then. With the people, that's it right there with the people?
yeah. So I mean, you have to flip it. You'd have to flip
Right.
it, rotate it around.
Oh, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
No, certainly.
Just,
And
but you-
any other?
we've driven there.
I hope the use of maps and things was useful, because that's one thing I'm a visual learner, and I'm going to go back to the original, or this one of these maps. Yeah, because I mean, this one I think really does show rather well, how they're all along the Beaverdams Trail or Beaverdams Road. Because it was obviously just such a well-trodden path.
Wow.
I've got a
Sarah, I'd
question,
just like to
Sarah.
thank-
Okay,
I can. It's Gail here. We expected you in March as it was planned, and it's great to have you back in video format. Thank you.
well, thank you very much. As I say, I apologize for these glitches. We did a dry run and it should have been okay. I'm not, and also that business with the fonts that it's trying to download. I don't know what that was about. I think I might need to take my computer in to have it looked
I
at.
think everybody did very well.
Yeah, really. Your strong point is your research. I mean, look at all she's.
I've got a question for you, Sarah.
Okay.
If you were to take those, the salaries of the teachers back in those days and bring it into current money, what would that translate to? Do you have any idea what a teacher would be making?
That I didn't even think to look into, but I'm guessing from what Thompson says that it really wasn't a great salary anyhow. And just given the turnover, especially in 1853, when
Yeah.
we've got 3 teachers, they were getting whatever they could get, which is I think why Walton Maudsley, struck his hard bargain. If we're going to keep him, they had to pay him a decent salary, such
That
as
was
it was
good.
decent.
Where's the people?
Sarah,
Yeah.
Patrick Little, I
ahead.
was intrigued by the fact that the dimensions of the school were 20 by 24 feet. I'm assuming it's feet.
Yeah.
Because that ties in with something that I recently had contact with. St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Thorold
Okay.
as a 33 by 33 foot parcel that occupies its front lawn that was transferred to the trustees of the Common School of Thorold.
Mm.
And the dimensions were 33 by 33. And notwithstanding that Subsequently, the lands around it were conveyed to the Presbyterian Church, and they built the church and they built the manse.
Mhm.
This 33 by 33 foot parcel continues to be listed in the name of the trustees of the Common Schools of Thorold. Now, I've had the pleasure of working with the District School Board of Niagara, and the lawyer, Jennifer Farron, was good enough to do some research and make the connection between the trustees of the Common School of Thorold and the present day District School Board of Niagara.
Oh, okay.
And they have agreed, given that the church has occupied the land since the building of the church at the very beginning of the 20th century, they are going to convey that 33 by 33 parcel to the church for $1. But I was wondering why there would be a parcel that would be 33 by 33. Maybe that was the size of the school.
What year was that? Do you know, or that's
In 1854, I believe.
before? Okay, so that's, yeah, a year before second school here. Yeah, it'd be interesting, I suppose, go to the registry. Well, we can't go to the registry office now, but just to look at the instruments pertaining
Well,
to that.
we pulled the instruments. One of the parishioners did a lot of research, but the school board at the beginning said, well, we don't know what the connection is. And frankly, we have no interest in that parcel, but if you can give us a reason why we should transfer it, we'll do it. So we put together an affidavit of a longtime church member, and were able to establish effectively adverse possession. And the school board very willingly, just earlier this week, actually, passed the motion through their property committee and the board to transfer the property to St. Andrew's Church.
Oh, interesting, yeah. I'm not sure about the dimensions. I'm just thinking, well, 33, an odd number is a bit strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I suppose it's really what they were able to
See?
do. I know that, who is it? It's Hodgkins, and who was Ryerson's assistant, and he produced the definitive kind of formula for a schoolhouse, which is what, you know, the current schoolhouse of Beaverdams looks like. And that was very formulaic. So I suppose it was probably to get around the fact that, you know, these other schools were kind of built according to specifications that weren't necessarily logical or whatever. But that is interesting though, eh?
So which St. Andrews was that? Which church?
The Presbyterian Church on
Of course.
Oh, Paul.
Carlton Street.
Yeah, Carlton.
Well,
and
it's at
Ormond. Yeah,
Ormond and
Carlton.
Claremont.
Yeah.
Claremont, that's right. It's yeah. There was no logic to why
No.
it came into existence and why it stayed there and no one did anything about it.
Yeah,
The church has paid the notional taxes on it, but
yeah. Well, that is strange. Yeah. Well, I suppose, you know, they were, you know, they built them as, you know, they needed to. They didn't. There wasn't any kind of logic necessarily to it.
True.
Are there any other questions? I mean, I can share screen again if anyone wants to see the.
Where's me?
Sarah, it's Val Wolf, actually. Thanks for the
hi.
presentation.
Oh, good.
Good to see you. You probably can't see me because I have the light off. And maybe everybody else already knows, I'm quite interested in the sort of history. So my father was a Yates, and my grandparents and others in the family lived on Yates Street, of course. So I don't actually know. I've tracked their history when they came to the area and that kind of thing, but I don't know about that subdivision and even how long that school was a school, because I guess my father and aunt, of course, attended as young
Yeah.
people, but then they went to school in Thorold later on. So
For high school, yeah.
yeah. So anyways, is that information somewhere that, a little bit more of that history?
Well, that school was built in 1879. So, and they arrived, I think your relatives came in what, they're late
About
18s?
13, 12 and 13.
Okay. Yeah, because they
Can-
came a bit before, right? Before the subdivision subdivision went in, because that's why they were on that side. And the Wilson subdivision is on the other side of Yates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was
I,
something I did discover when I was kind of doing research on the area. I think they owned a lot of that land. And of course, Wilson owned the land that belonged to Lachlan Carter. And, but only on my bearings are bad here, on the south side of Marlat's Road.
mhm.
And
And can you still walk? So when you access that photo that you took that you did with Jamie, which I guess we could get Jamie to take us to, but can you access that from the east side of the canal or the west side? That's on the east side, right? So how would you get to that trail?
this one right here, you mean? This is the photo you're in.
Yeah, that's on the west side of the canal, right?
Yes.
But where you took the picture of where you thought the old schoolhouse was.
Oh, yeah, that
side,
was,
right?
yeah, Martin, I've been out there. If you go up the hill, and there's all that, not chicken wire, whatever, the chain link fence stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The
canal land stuff.
the baseball hill, I was told what. If you climb up that way and you can't go along Marlet's Road because it is just so badly rutted and it's always wet. I mean, it could be the driest point of the summer, but it's still, just muddy nest.
Mhm.
So if you go around the long way and with your GPS, you can kind of.
We used to go.
And if I could do the pointer, you could, I don't know if you can see me doing this, can you?
Yep.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so this is, this would be the road allowance. I'm fairly sure, again, I don't have sophisticated equipment to be certain, but the canal is just on the other side of that. So we came up around the back and came over here, and then that's Martin's
You and
foot.
I kind of walked around there.
But you can still see the foundation. Stupidly, we didn't bring a tape measure, because that would have been to be able to measure whether it is that
Yeah.
26 by 32 or
Footprint,
whatever
yeah,
it is.
yeah. Cool. My grandfather used to walk that way across into the beaver board paper mill every day to work.
Yeah.
And home every day at lunch, walk back again. So
do you know
a lot of history there.
yeah, exactly. Of course. Thanks.
Yeah, it is fascinating just to think that, it's, that path has been used for millennia, which is really cool and kind of exciting and kind of sad, therefore, to see it so chewed up with these stupid vehicles that the kids drive, or whoever is driving. I guess it's not just kids. It's funny because when we were over there, this was in April, you could just hear them whirring around on the other side of the canal, third canal. Only who knows what kind of damage over there.
Animals don't have a chance.
Thanks.
These are very quiet people.
Hi, Sarah, it's Peter and Jane Jennings. And we were wondering that we noticed that the school was costing $12 and the teacher was being paid in pounds. And I'm trying to understand why both currencies would be referred to at that same time.
I'm not sure exactly. I do know that I have looked into that, and it is I don't think it's till really the 1860s that it becomes more Canadian, or the dollars are used. I suppose the dollars at that point probably suggested the fact that it was American money, possibly. I'm just suggesting. I don't know if that's true or not. And
I realize.
But yeah, the current, they do say, like pounds currency. So
maybe they purchased the materials from the US then in dollars.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, there certainly was a lot of traffic back and forth, and that's the kind of neat thing that I don't. I mean, you hear, if you read about the Beaverdams area, Israel Swayze is driving cattle back and forth over the river, even after he arrived over, and but there was a lot of cross-border traffic. So it would make sense.
That, someone was supposed to arrive for their celebration from Buffalo who didn't show up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's, and certainly the fact that, certainly the this event at Kelly's Grove is I mean, I've only just provided a snippet. I don't even know if I say anything there but certainly there were people from both sides coming over.
Yeah, with the state of the roads, it's amazing how much they were moving back and forth around the area.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Where is Kelly's Grove?
So it would be on the, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, my bad. I'm sorry, I should. Okay, so Kelly's Grove would be, okay, I'll just pull up this map. I think that's probably the easiest. Oop. Oh, I am doing that. Sorry.
So small.
Place start from, sorry, that was my bad.
Yeah, man.
Too, yeah, we're trying to do it too quickly, but let me just show you on one of these maps. You can, okay, well, okay, this is probably as good as any. So you see, this is Kelly land and this is Marla land, but the Kelly's Grove would have been on the Kelly side. Actually, I think I'm wrong there. I think actually this was actually here, but anyhow, but the thing is, it would have been on Kelly's land. I'm just gonna
What's
get
the
it.
road going north and south there?
No, that one, it's probably just a road allowance. Let me just check. Yeah, there would be a road, the road up to Thorold. So on the other side of the canal. But let me just, I'm gonna just find a better map here, sorry. Okay, here we go, yeah, so that kind of shows us here. So Kelly's Grove would have been right here, just in the, can you see me doing that? I don't know. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it would have been, I guess it was a grove. It's interesting because it's not Marlat's Grove, it's more Kelly's Grove, because Marlat was obviously more supportive of the project than Kelly was, but maybe that was to placate him, because I have read actually it's sometimes called Kelly's schoolhouse. So, you know.
Peter Upper. John.
Sarah,
Yes.
that map that you've got up right now in the upper left corner, it says John Brown. Is that the John Brown house that we're talking about in the news, the stone house that's going to be?
Yeah, and also this is John Brown up here as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But John Brown, I mean, I was going to the register office as much as I could before they no longer let us in there, and I have to now start buying these things or buying access. Yeah, no, it was John Brown. He owned so much property in Thorold. It was Thorold, Stamford, Grantham, Niagara Lake, Humberstone. He had land also in on Pelly Island. He was amazing. He was actually, about a week before he died, an Ottawa paper described him as being, or suggesting that he might have been the richest man in the Dominion. And he always went by John Brown, contractor of Thorold. Very, very interesting fellow. But yeah, it is him. In the past I would have thought, well, no, it's not. It's another John Brown. It's such a common name, but no, that was, he had quarries. He was, wherever there were quarries, he had his finger in every quarry that he could.
And if you had a quarry, how rich you'd be.
Oh, yeah.
So are there any other questions or any other observations? I hope the time the next person speaks, there won't be any technical glitches. I do apologize.
I have a question. I noticed that you're recording. Does the Historical Society post the recordings of the presentations?
I'm not sure how that's worked. Certainly, I don't think they're going to be uploaded online, but I think people can request a copy for their own personal use.
How are you doing sitting there?
Certainly, I'm happy to share my PowerPoint if you.
Yeah, no, I'd love that, but yeah, because my brother and sister might be interested, so I guess I'll get the email from the one you sent.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And also, yes, yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Nobody wants.
I'm not quite sure when or how it'll. I guess you just download it, whoever.
Yeah, Zoom
Folks will
keeps them
download.
for a length of time, and if you get the code, you can go download it. I've done that at other.
Oh, okay. Well, that would work. Then, yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, it is. It's a neat story, I have to say, and also just fascinating about all these the teachers. And for instance, Janet Leet. I'm sure there's a very interesting story there, and anyhow, it'd be fun to kind of delve into that a bit more.
Yeah.
Boy, are you ever a tired guy, eh? What did you do all day, Charlie?
And
hi, Sarah. It's Joanna Abrahams. I used to be your neighbor.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Very good.
Okay.
Well, actually, I broke my ankle pretty badly riding my bicycle. But anyways, I have a question. Is Anna Gale's transcription available to the public?
Well, what I'm gonna do is I will make a copy. I'll keep a copy for myself, but I'll give one to Mayholm and I'll give one to Brock. I don't know if they have them. And I want to check out when I can get back to Mayholm, what exactly they have, because I certainly don't remember seeing it. And I remember being told by Brenda it was there, but I had never seen it. So, but basically, I'll show you what I have. It was just, I guess she must have, handwritten
Okay,
in the, and all of her notes. And it's basically just the nomination and election of trustees, and then also the various teachers that were hired and how much they're being hired for. And then it kind of peters out about 1861.
do you recall if there was any reference to Dexter Deverardo?
He does come up a lot, but not in here. I'm gonna actually, if you want, I can just scan it and just email it to you. Are you?
Sure, J. Abrahams at simpatico.ca.
Okay.
Geez, that's her address. My
I'm
goodness.
gonna have to, sorry, find so much paper here, but okay, J. Abrahams.
Yes, that's ABRAHAMSE.
That's right. At Simpatico, you said?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, what I'll do is, I mean, if anyone else wants a copy of it, I'll just scan it and just send it to, if you want to send an email to, to me. I think my email's on the top of the lecture, but it's basically, it's kingheadsarah, all one word, @gmail.com. But if anyone wants to contact, I mean, I'm happy to do it. But yeah, she was completely out of the blue. She just phoned me up and I thought it was a prank call, or not, I thought it was just one of those marketing things. And then to discover she had this and she was just getting rid of stuff. So and it's a really interesting reading. I was kind of thrilled by it.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I want to see how they wrap it up. I guess I should.
Any other questions or comments or? Well, I hope it was satisfactory. I hope you all got something out of it.
Indeed. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Dave Willer again. I didn't say it at the start, I'm the president of the Historical Society, but I do want to thank you, Sarah. This is our first ever virtual presentation. They can never take that away from you. Will always be the first to give a virtual presentation for the Historical Society of St. Catharines. I think it went quite well. We had a lot of participants. The technology, all in all, I think it went fine. Believe it or not, in some of our in-person presentation, the technology has been a lot worse.
Oh, really?
We're actually kind of used to this. Is actually better than how things normally go. So
well,
I'm pleasantly surprised by it. But no, I'm very glad you were able to do this, and I'm glad we did it. I think it was a success, and I am looking forward to some more. But again, thank you. And then
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I do want to say to all of our members again, we're continuing with presentations in the new year, but also be negligent in my role if I didn't mention about buying memberships for the 2021 year for the Historical Society. We always put them in the back of the newsletter, a little form to fill out, and you can always just email to I think there's an email address there. So anyone, please, for the 2021 year membership. And again, the membership is now on a calendar year basis. So it goes from January 1st to December 31st. So if you buy a membership now, it goes to 2021. So I did want to mention that. And then other than that, again, look forward to seeing everyone in the new year. For January, you cannot use the excuse you've been snowed in or, the weather wasn't good, you couldn't go, because you just actually have to move into the next room to go to a presentation. So there's hopefully we'll have it just as well attended as this one. So again, I want to thank everyone and see you then at the next presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.